Okay, so I'm going to do a new. And I should give these meaningful names, but make sure it's 2D. And I'm going to go to scenes. So double click that. And I got sample scene here. I'll right click on it and choose rename. And I'll just call this scene 1. Now I'm going to go ahead and right click and I'll choose create. And I want to create a new scene, which is right here. And I'll call this one scene 2. Over here, I'll click on inspector to bring that up. Now, if I go back to assets, I'm going to right click and say import new asset. Now I'll choose Mario. And also I'm going to right click and say import new asset. Then I'll choose Pink Panther. Now I can click and drag Mario up on the first scene here. If I go to scenes and I double click scene 2 and click save, then if I go back to assets, I can drag the Pink Panther onto scene 2. If I go back to scenes now, I can double click scene 1, click save to save our work there. So now we have 2 scenes. Got Mario in one, we got Pink Panther in the other. Is that good so far? Okay. Wait a couple minutes here. Now we took a look at objects the other day, and so we're going to expand upon that concept. If I'm in scene 1, I click Mario. Remember how we would add our component, we'd create a new script? Like I could click add component here, and I could choose new script. I'm not going to do it, but we could do that. You can also, if you go back to your assets, you could right click here and say create. And here at the top is a C# script. And I'll call this player movement. The what? No, it doesn't matter. But it has to be in your assets folder. But up here it is scene 1. Now here we're creating a script file that's not tied to any specific scene, not to any specific object. We're just generally creating a C# code. And I called it player movement, but you call it whatever you want. And we'll go ahead and double click it. Did we get it? I was wondering if it's going to ask you a password. Seems like it's asked that for the last 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
You're in?
I don't think it has to ask me yet.
Maybe I've just been giving you different computers each time. That could be.
Maybe.
Everybody in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now this right here is public, and it's a class. Public means you can access, not private. Private means like you can only access it from within that particular object definition, that particular class definition. And I call it player movement. Now we're going to define items here. You could have variables inside here. You could have public, int lives. You could type private, int a. Now the public would mean I could access it from outside this code. The private means that I have to only refer to it within this code. Remember when we did the get and sets? That's where it's private.
Mm-hmm.
Public is where you could access it directly. We're not going to do any of the private, so I'll get rid of that. And I'm actually not going to do anything with lives either. I was just demonstrating what those variables, how they work. So down here in our update, we're going to have vector2 position. And then I'll say position is equal to this dot transform dot position. I believe that this is optional anymore. Like I think you could actually get rid of that. It would still work. I like this though because it really points it out. What are we working with? The position wise.
Position.
This.
Yeah. All right.
We're working with this. You're working with this. It can be anything, right? Because everything has a position. I can move these all around. That's why I like this, because it really emphasizes what we're working with anything. So this, and I know that's pretty vague, but it's meant to be. That's why objects work in this case. Okay, so I retrieve the position, and put it into the variable POS. And now I'm going to check if input dot, I don't know why I can never remember this, get key. Yeah. Get key code dot right arrow. Then I'm going to say position dot x is equal to position dot x plus 0.1f. And I'm going to update my position. So I'll say this dot transform dot position is equal to position. Now I'm going to go ahead and click Attach to Unity. Notice we have not said Mario here. We have not said Pink Panther, have we? We just very vaguely said this. And I can go ahead and stop the debugging on that. Just want to make sure the code is over there. In theory, it should update automatically, but it doesn't always. Okay. Now if I run it, it's not going to do anything. Press my right arrow key, doesn't do anything. If I was on scene 2, it would not do anything because we haven't actually associated it yet. Now over here, we've created this right here. And this is our object, referred to in C# as class. So that's our object. Now we want to create an instance of it. So if I click Mario up here, you see there's an add component. If I click that, you see there's a scripts option. And if you expand that, you see there's player movement. That's the one we just created. So I'll click that. Now if I run it and do my right arrow key, you'll see that the character is actually moving. So that created an instance of it. You also notice in the variables we declared public int lives. Over here you see a variable called lives. It's equal to 0. We're going to see in coming classes how we can manipulate that directly. But your variables are right there. Now, if I go to scene 2 now, so double click scene 2, go ahead and click save. Got my Pink Panther. Click up here. Pink Panther doesn't have any code associated with it, does it? So I'm going to click my add component. Come down to scripts, expand that. And again, you see player movement. And just like before, it has its own lives and so forth. So now if I run this, if I do my right arrow key, you'll see the Pink Panther moving across the screen. Again, what we did is we created another instance of that object. So that's what this is right here. Now this is still our original definition over here. And the beauty of this is that whatever changes I put in here will be propagated through every game object that uses it. So if I wanted to do the left arrow key, if I come over here and said if input dot get key code dot left arrow, then position dot x is equal to position dot x minus 0.1f. Now you have to put some thought into this when you're developing an object, because before we knew who we were working with, right? We were working with 100% Mario, or we were working with 100% another object. Remember in asteroids where we had the meteors or asteroids, whatever they're, asteroids actually moving automatically? Could I put that code into this generic object here? No. Because if I did that, then the ship would have been moving automatically too, wouldn't it? So that's why you have to think about your object. Is this specifically player movement? Is this all objects? Is it, whatever? That's a tricky part, planning it. Now I'll go ahead and, like I say, if I come over here, go to assets, if we go to player movement, we don't see our code over here. So if I did my attach to Unity, and then you could immediately just stop debugging. Then if I come over here, you see your code's updated. Now if I run this, the Pink Panther moves right or left. If I go over to Mario in scene 2, or scene 1, sorry, click save anytime it asks you, and go over here and I run this. Then you see it move. Does that make sense on what we did with this object? Now, if I wanted to have something just move on the screen, if I come over here, go to assets, I'm going to right click and choose an import new asset. I don't have no asteroids. Okay, I'm going to choose my Pac-Man. I'm going to have Pac-Man just move around on the screen, back and forth, I guess. Well, I can right-click here and choose Create and choose C# script again. And now I could say random or no constant or secondary character movement. Secondary character movement. It's kind of long, but I guess that'll work. So I'm going to double click secondary character movement. By the way, this right here is our object name, secondary character movement. And then you see there's a colon, and it says mono behavior. And it says mono behavior is a base class from which every Unity script derives. What that implies is that when you have different items over here, it will inherit, it'll bring in their information. So you don't have to redefine everything under the sun. I don't know if this will let me go to it, but let me go to definition. I right click this, I'm choosing go to definition. And this is again what they have declared. It's an object. It's called mono behavior. And see, it comes from, it says behaviors are components that can be enabled or disabled. They get down here, remember the gets and sets that we looked at before? So you got our gets and sets. Because again, they're trying to control exactly how can you use this information. They don't want you accessing the variables in it directly. All these have defined for you. Now, if I right click on this and say go to implementation, then you see the two places where it's implemented. And those are what we just did, right? Let me go back to, go back to definition. You see there's pluses over here. It says use GUI layout, cancel invoke, run in edit mode, is invoking, string method. If I click the plus, you see got summary is any invoke and method name pending, parameters method name, gives you that. You can expand that, maybe see a little bit more about it. This dot here, you can see it's kind of hard to see, but summary, parameters, value, so forth. It makes sense on what those are. So when you're over defining something, like I declare a vector 2, and I do position.x. Well, if I right-click vector 2 and say go to definition, what do you see declared?
X.
Yeah, X and Y, because that's what we can access, right? They even got some other items up here, K epsilon. I don't know if I can access that directly, but if I went back to player movement, let's see if I do a position dot K. No, doesn't look like it. Back to definition. We got our definition here, vector 2. Float this. And I couldn't even tell you what all this is. Get, negative infinity, magnitude. What they went through is they've defined everything you might need. They've gone through and set up different operators you can use. What does this imply you can do? You can add vectors, right? You can subtract vectors. No, I'm guessing that's a unary vector. So it flips the signs. So 3, 5 would become -3, -5. This says that you can subtract vectors. This says you can probably multiply vectors. No, you can multiply a number times a vector. So like if you want to take 3 times your position, increase your distance 3-fold. It'll let you do that. What that means is that over, like right here, I could say, I'm not sure if it'll let me actually do the position or I have to do X, but let's see. Position is equal to position times 5. Let's see if that works. It worked, didn't it? Because of the definition over here saying we can multiply a float times a vector. So if you're sitting there trying to wonder what can I do with it, if you go and look at the definition, that'll help you give you an idea of what all can you do. And like I say, I'm not a genius at this particular vector 2, so I couldn't tell you what all this does. I never even tried to look at the code behind this. You expand this, you just get summary. I don't even know if it'll let you look at the code. I don't see any. The idea behind it is an object, you don't have to know the detail. To turn on the remote, I just push this little blue button. It's pretty dummy proof. I just click the blue button, it turns on. That's the idea behind an object, is they don't want you to know the details of all this. They just want you to know how to use it. So you've been using objects over and over in everything you're doing. Now, some items are objects. You can tell by their color. Like here's one that's defined. Vector 2, you see also is a different color. That's an object. Now, if you look at INT, does it look like the same color as those objects, those classes? Doesn't. Yeah. I don't even know if I could look at the definition of this. I never have. Let's see, go to definition of integer. Guess I can. This tells me I don't think that took me to the definition. Just took me everything had INT in it, I think. Not sure about that. Like I said, I never have tried to look at those. Okay. Now, I got my Mario here. I just created an instance. You notice lives here. I'm going to put 3 there. So assign that to 3. If I go to my other scene, go ahead and save that. Now I'll click Pink Panther. Does it have 3 there? No. I can put 5 there and press enter. When you create an instance of an object, it has its own definitions you can work with in. And this is how you define that you can update these. Like, for example, if I'm guessing if I come over here, assuming it lets me. I never have tried to do private within Unity. We did it the other day with just a normal class. But if I say, let's see, age. So I do private int age, and I'll click attach to Unity. And you see over here, I don't see that age, do I? So it's not there. If I add on something else, if I stop debugging, public double dollars. Click attach to Unity. Then I'll just go ahead and stop debugging there. Notice we have another variable there called dollars. And again, we can set its own values. Does that make sense that the lives and dollars here isn't the same as the lives and dollars in the other instance?
Yeah.
Okay. Lots of things you can do with objects. If I go back to assets, this is import new asset. I think where my files are. Under documents, I think. I double clicked on any project. Let's see, where's my code at? Here's playercontroller.cs. I can add that in. Why is that beneficial? Well, if I go to the Pink Panther now here, if I were to add component, I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to show it. If I go to scripts, what do you see there?
Player control.
Your controller. What that means is that you can, in theory, if you're like working in a game development house, you put that in its own folder, not within the folder of each project. And so when you start a new project, you go and you import that in. You bring that code in, and then you can use it. There's a little bit of a danger there. You have to know what you're sharing and with who, and they provide. There's ways to manage your source and so forth. Because if you're all sharing that one file, what happens if somebody makes a bad change to it? It affects all of them. So if you recompile a program, it brings in whatever change I made. On the plus side of that is if you got that in 5 games you're developing and you're sharing that one piece of code there, if they find a bug in the current game they just released, well, if they fix it in that one place, where's it going to fix it then?
All places.
All places. Some cases you may want to have shared files, some cases maybe not. And let's see, which one did I just add? That's the one I just added, wasn't it?
Player control, yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and delete it. Okay. That's about all I'm gonna have you create some objects and share them on different game objects and so forth. That'll be one of the assignments. But is there any questions on that part? Now, if I come up here to the window, you see there's layouts. And I've just been using the standard one here, not changing it a whole lot. But you can choose 2x3, which shows this. You can choose window, layouts. Here's 4 split. Layouts, default, which is what we've been using. Tall. So it gives you a little bit more real estate here, especially on a laptop. Wide. It's more like that. You see you can save your layout. If you design one you like, you can delete a layout. You can modify these. Like if I don't want the hierarchy showing. If I do this drop down here, I can choose this close tab. If I want a new tab, I can click that same drop down and I can choose add tab and choose whatever. I can choose animation. Now we got those tabs. I can come here, choose add tab, choose hierarchy. Does that make sense on the layouts?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna go to window, layouts, and which one do I want? 2x3, I think. Down here, I can right click on this and I can change the add tab, and I could choose different items here. Now our got our Pink Panther up here, and the scene goes along with it. This is gonna throw me having in this format. Oh, over here. Now I can do the drop down here. You see you can save your scene here, select scene asset, add new scene asset. There's a game object. There's a UI, user interface. And somewhere is the canvas. There it is. I wish I'd put things in alphabetical order. So it's right there. It's canvas. What if you can right click and say, no, you can't. So you choose canvas. It drops a canvas on there. Now, if you double click canvas, it shows a rectangle. And you can blow that up, so forth, with your mouse wheel. Zoom in, zoom out of me. You can hold down your shift key. You can move that around like whatever you want. Now within this canvas, if I right click, go to user interface, these are the different elements we can drop on the canvas. For example, I could drop a text on there. Now if I zoom in a little bit on that, blow it up, you see it says new text. That happens to correspond with what you got written over here. I can come over here and change this text to the Pink Panther game. And you'll see it change here. Now this is our canvas, but even more important, you see down here, you actually see text down here in our game, in our scene. Now you can click this and drag it and move it up. And that's not very easy to see, is it? I can right click here and I can say add tab and choose scene. So you can go back and forth between the scene and so forth. So here I want to change the color of it. Color, that's black, maybe yellow. That looks better, doesn't it? So it's easier to see. I want to change maybe the font style, or font size, I mean. Say 22. I do that, I suddenly can't see it anymore. But you can come up to your canvas here and you can make that text bigger. Then you can move it around. Now, for some reason, they tell you not to put it up against the edge of the canvas. You want to back about 5 pixels or so, but you don't want it right up to it. And it had something to do with the different monitors that you might play a game on. And some monitors would cut it off, or some would be okay. Now you see we got our position here, and got our anchors. Because if I had this right here, and I came up with different sizes, like I had my game such at different screen sizes and so forth, maybe you want it anchored somewhere. So if I click the anchor here, so click that, you can choose where you want it anchored at. It says top, middle, left, so forth. Choose the top. If I choose left, then the anchor is based upon this right here. Does that make sense what this position is reference to? Okay, goes along with the anchor. Now, one thing I was playing with earlier, and I don't think I could figure out, is the rotation. Maybe I was just doing something wrong. What would you expect this to rotate around? The X? I don't know what it rotates around, but it's not the X. The what? Is it? See, X is this way. Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess it would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's why it looks like it's getting smaller, just 'cause it's
Is this tilted toward us or away from us? Okay. Um, so I have to think about this one. Y is up and down. But the rotation we typically think of is this here, which would be rotated like 45 degrees. So again, you can change the values here. You can change them programmatically. So you can change your scale. Guess that's about all exciting part there. Now we're going to be looking at this right here where we can programmatically change that. That's what we'll be doing during the next class. To programmatically change it, maybe I want to keep track of the time. So I can come here to the canvas, right click on it, and I want to do a UI text. Put this up here, and this might say lives. Resize that, change its color. I was looking if it had something like Word has where you can copy the formatting. I don't see it though. In Word, it's like a paintbrush. Oops, not change it. There we go. And then right beside that, you could have another text. So you right click, choose user interface, choose text. And this one, maybe you'd have the number 3. Indicate 3 lives. And then I take this, move it up here. One book I found indicated to put these in one text. To me, it makes it a lot easier coding wise if you have them in separate text. Now we want to give this a name. Text 2 isn't very informative, is it? So I can right click on this and choose rename and call it lives text. These I could give them names if I want to. Right click on them and say rename title text. And I might not even rename that since I don't want to actually ever refer to lives.
that one you could put it as number of lives.
Yeah, maybe that'd be more meaningful. Like that. Now you can do a lot of other things with the canvas. You could right click on it and choose user interface. You see, you got image, you got raw image, text mesh pro button. To put a button on here. Why would you put a button on there?
Click here to start.
Yeah, and that works. That makes sense especially if you got a mouse, right? Then you can click a button, and you can put code behind the button. I thought this was especially interesting. Input field. You could, at the start of a game, you could ask the person their name, right? They put in their name, and then you click the button. So it's geared more to just using, just keys. You could program this kind of like if you have a mouse setup. You don't have a mouse on a PS3 or PS4, do you? So obviously you'd have to gear this canvas to whatever you are designing it for. Now, we're going to see how to change the contents of a text we add on here. We're not going to do that today because I want one more item I want to show you and still give you some time to work on projects. Remember Super Mario Brothers, how to pass information back and forth? I'm going to save this, and I'm going to open Super Mario Brothers. Go ahead and click save if it asks. And I was playing a little bit with this here. I haven't enhanced it yet to do anything with the lives, but you see we have our canvas there. By the way, it worked real well to have this in this format. That's why I was playing with that layout earlier, is because when you try to put both of those in like the upper top part of your screen, I couldn't see anything. It's like, well, that's useless. But you have your canvas up here. So I screwed that up. There it goes. Now to pass information back and forth, if I go to like scene 1, it's shockingly how easy it is. Okay. To pass information between scenes, or just anywhere in your game, if you do player preferences dot set string, and then this is whatever you want to call it, and then this is whatever you want it to equal to, and then you do your player preferences save. So, for example, if I wanted to save the number of lives, if I did player preferences dot set. Now, when you do that, you see there's a set float, set int, and set string. If I'm saving or going to record off the number of lives, what would I save? Yeah, so set int, and you call it whatever you'd want. So I could call it lives, comma, and then I could pass in 3, for example. Now, after you set that, then you have to save it. So if I did player preferences dot save, that would save it off. Now, if I wanted to access it somewhere else, then if I was going to if I was going to scene 2, for example, all you do is simply to refer to it with a get string or get integer. Like in our case, if we did lives, I would say lives is equal to player preferences dot get int, and then you have to remember what you named it. That's the hard part. Like this one, we named it lives, didn't we? So up here, I would do get lives. Does that make sense to know what the player preferences does? So you were asking the other day, how do you get Mario to appear on the right side of the screen? Well, if you save off the player preferences of where you're coming from, like which scene you're coming from, then if you're entering scene 1 and you came from scene 2, you could put your character on the right side, and so forth. Does that make sense? I have a little bit of tweaking to do with this one. I don't think I ran out of time during lunch. I was playing with it. If I run this, maybe. There it goes. Slow. Come over here. I'm right over there, aren't I? If I do my back arrow, you see which side up here on now? Up here on that side. Well, I'm facing the wrong direction, all right. So that's why I say I got a little bit of tweaking to do on that. But if I look at the code behind that, I have to really think this through now. Okay, I go to scene 1, and I set my. When I left scene 1, I'm on the right side, aren't I? So then, oh no, I guess I put it in both places. I don't need it in both places. But when my position is less than -8, that means I'm going to the left. And I'm going to the left. I'm gonna go back to my first scene. So I want to say I want my Mario to appear on the right side. So then, over in scene 1, I retrieve which side they should be on. And if it's right side, then I do my position at 8. Does that make sense? If it was left side, I would do my position what? -8? So you could simply do right side and left side and have this same structure here. And I don't know why I put an else down here, because you either coming from the right side or left side. So that probably isn't necessary. Assuming it wasn't in debug. But that works really slick for determining which side you need to appear on. So that solved that issue. Is there any questions on the player preferences and what it could be used for? When you're going from scene to scene, you could use that to also pass number of lives left. Like if you've lost 1 life here, then you pass it on to the next scene so they know how many lives to start with. Well, I want you to build a class for movement, and then just to create a dummy program where you're, doing like I did. You have 2 or 3 objects on there and 3 scenes or something like that, and you attach that generic class, the player movement, to each one of those. Clear as mud.
So it's like you have like Pac-Man, Mario, Pink Panther, and they just have to move.
Yes, and do all your up, down, left, right, and so forth. So finish that off. And then you're not creating, remember, you're not creating a script for each separate one. You're creating a generic class, a generic object, which then you'll assign to a script. And yeah, the rest of the time for that. And then we'll go more into layouts and the player preferences next time.